Good morning. Welcome to your morning program, The Dailies on Echo Television, where we keep you updated with all that is happening on the papers this morning. I am Sela Elisha Dasham, and I've been to the program with Rachel Tansy. Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Rachel.
Sarah.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. How was
The
weekend?
weekend was fine.
Okay. Did you get to exercise your franchise during the election?
Yeah, I was able to go there in as much as, there was so much voter apathy. It was very much like it was. And it made it to the extent that, INEC stopped election really early, in as much as the time was extended. But in my own polling zone, there wasn't anything like that. By 2:30, elections were stopped and all of that. And even people who came after,
You
didn't
don't
get the
get
chance to. Yeah, exactly. Which I believe that it shouldn't be like that in the first place. But then it's usually common with off-cycle elections like this. But it was really terrible, and I'm just hoping that what this spirit doesn't go, because it's like every election we keep seeing a decline in the number of voters that go out, and then it's not supposed to be like that. We're supposed to, regardless of how we feel about the system, you have a duty as a citizen of Nigeria, and then it's expected for you to go and play your part. Even if the system is all about play your part and let the other play their part. If the other don't play their part, then you will be able to say, I played my part and you didn't play. But when you don't, what can you say? You can't point fingers at anybody
Of course.
when yes is pointing back at you. So I just hope we have better attitudes towards voting, regardless of what the situation is in the country. There is a need for you to go out and vote, and then you should, because either way, if you're not voting, someone else is voting, and we will keep having the wrong leaders out there. Don't think that if you don't vote, somebody will vote on your behalf. It's every man to his vote. Nobody will vote on your behalf.
Rachel, you really made a very right point. The fact that this is a duty, and beyond a duty, it is even your right to actually get to select or actually elect who you feel is capable of running that position. I also got to, to vote, and just like you mentioned, there was quite. I mean, if you're talking about voter apathy, I mean, I was really shocked because we know that the number of polling units have actually increased. So on my way actually working, because from my house to my polling unit was a bit far, and then on my way walking down to where my polling unit, I could actually pass some polling unit, and then it was very scanty. I mean, you could see the INEC officials and resident
Like
officers,
nothing.
sitting down. There was
Yeah.
nobody actually. In fact, my dad was telling me that in his polling unit, there were only 4 as of the time he actually was able to, to vote. So that is to say that a number of people did not turn out. And this behavior or this feeling we have that, I mean, whoever is going to Emadona, whether I vote or not, but your vote really makes a difference. So we just hope, even though we know for places like in Plateau State, I mean, there were about 18 or 19 polling units that did not finish. So they had to do their own voting yesterday. And then we saw that some of the reasons, I mean, I just hope that INEC would do better. For every election, just like you mentioned, it's like a litmus test for them to be able to test to see if they will be able to perform and to do better. But then we saw that some polling unit, I mean, ballot paper was short, and there's some reasons that you asked. I mean, didn't you know the number of, I mean, registered voters in each of these polling units? Why we have a shortage of paper? So we hope that INEC will do better when it comes to that, because this will give us an idea of what will happen to other elections that we'll be having before the end of the year. Well, let's run into the paper, Rachel. And remember, to our viewers, you can drop your comments and your views on our Facebook and YouTube handles as well. Now, the first paper we'll be taking this morning is the Leadership newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, abducted Ekiti pupils, teachers regain freedom. Senator Bukar Abar Ibrahim is dead. You can find details on page 37. We have CAC hides Intel's ownership, frustrates request for disclosure. You can find more details on page 7. APC, PDP, NNPP win rerun by-election seats in states. The big story on the paper: amid hardship, Nigerians struggle with fake foods and products. So we are opening our borders to more foreign products, and then we are not taking our time to look at the standard. And we have some stats on the paper. You can find more details inside on page 4. But it is really a hardship that, Sela, not only are we struggling with our currency devaluing. But imagine spending a huge sum of money to buy a product and it turned out to be fake or a substandard product. And this is what we are going through. So it's like one hardship on
After
another
another.
hardship. And you wonder, what is the Nigerian government doing, Sele, about this hardship in the country? It feels like nothing is happening. At least let me be able to buy an inflated product and see that it is the original, not having spent so much money and then see it is fake. Remember the time we had this when the importation of rice was banned, and people started importing fake rice, and people had instances where they bought this rubber rice. And at that time the price of rice like went high. It was hiked immediately because it was more like illegal importation, and it just means more and more charges and fees and all of that. And this is just, I believe, a repetition of what has happened in the past, where we are now having access to these goods and you're buying it at an outrageous price, and then you're ending up with substandard, low quality, fake products, and even things that will eventually be hazardous to your health. This cool, because you never know what is that thing you're consuming that can poison you, because here is it, we're having what is being dangerous. I mean, it's worrisome on a lot of levels.
Remember, Rachel, when the border was open to those over 40 something products, toothpicks, cement, and the rest? You remember clearly, Rachel, I raised a concern. I said, I just hope that with the opening of these borders will not become a dumping ground for a lot of products. And we're seeing it on the paper. So that is not to say I wasn't a prophet of doom, but we are seeing things like this happen. And I remember raising the concern. I said, this is where we need the custom to work together with NAFDA to make sure that for every product that Nigerians consume, down to even drugs, Rachel, that is where I'm even more concerned about. We know that our multinational companies that were actually in the country are living, and we saw that the hike of drugs is over 200% presently. So imagine, not only are we going to be fighting fake foods and products, drugs as well, Rachel, because you could imagine you are taking a paracetamol, you are not very sure of the company that this paracetamol is being made up of. And so I'm just hoping that let us see more proactive measures coming from NAFTA, that they should be giving, the enabling environment. They should work with customers. It shouldn't be about the money that these people will pay to get these products into the country, but that for everything Nigerians consume, it should be verified, it should be checked. We saw the issue of even products that we use for skin and all of that. Some of them will be fake. Why? Because right now, if you go to social media, you see a lot of people, is this fake or original drugs, and then soap, perfume, and all of that. So I'm just hoping that Nigerian government should do their own part of the work. If you have opened the border, then you should be ready to actually cross-check every of these food and products to be sure that Nigerians will not actually fall victims to all of them. We don't have doctors in the country presently, so we shouldn't add fake food and products to part of the problem Nigerians will face, and then they don't even have money to actually treat themselves. Therefore, we look forward to seeing what the government will do concerning this.
Still on the leadership newspaper, rumblings in civil service over permanent secretary's deployment. Namibia's president Game Hope dies at 82. Minister cancels planned birthday party for husband. I wonder how this concerns Nigerians, but you can find the details on page 7. Discos failed to refund customers. This is on meters. You can find details on page 31, and that's all the news on leadership newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at what the blueprints have for us, where we have the first story here on solid minerals. $20 billion UK, Saudi Arabia, Turkey investment coming. This is coming from an investor. You can find detail on page 9. Ex-Yobe Governor Ibrahim dies at 75. Tinubu, Buhari, Lawan, Baru Abbas mourn. You can find more detail of that in the paper. And on business, First Bank wins corporate bank at the Euro Money Awards. You can find detail inside the paper. Also, we are having on Saturday rerun and by-election. Terrorist attack Yobe Collation Center, kill 2. Protests in Kaduna over killing of varsity graduate by stray bullet. exercise suspended in Akwa Ibom, Kano, and Enugu. You can start reading more detail of that. And I think these were the reasons or some of the things we're looking forward to during the by-election, with the fact that INEC and even the security agency that were being deployed to actually make sure that everything worked out well should actually do their work. Because I remember, I mean, like my polling unit, Rachel, I could clearly remember that even the police officers that were there, I didn't know were police officers. They were dressed in mufti. And so to some extent, you could actually mistaking them to be maybe one of the electorate that was coming to the polling unit. And then it will not really, why I'm saying I being in their attire, so that you actually know there is the presence of a security agency in that polling unit. But then here we're seeing that, I mean, a graduate actually died by stray bullet in Kaduna, and this is really, really sad. So I'm just hoping that for every election, let us see our security operatives playing their own part. I know that sometimes, most of the time, when you see them there, they are not with any arms whatsoever, so that they don't scare people. But I mean, it is needed. We saw those who were parading around to make sure that everything was going out well. So we hope to see more proactive measures. I know you cannot stop people who are born on just causing trouble, all this hoodlum whatsoever. But I think there's what we can do as a country to reduce or minimize the effect of all of these people causing havoc in polling units or even during elections in general.
You're the police, you're the security officer. You have what it takes to stop these people who are out to cause trouble from doing that. The problem we have is that nobody is trying to stop them before they cause the problem. You can't be a security personnel and tell me that you are not trained to perceive danger or trouble before it appears. Then it means we are not being trained well in the country. And I keep saying, I don't want to believe that. It's not true. We are well equipped. We have the intelligence. We have everything. You are to perceive, okay? In the first place, there are certain people that it's the intelligence, it's the training. I've never been trained like that. So, of course, I don't know. But I know that it comes with the job. Being able to sense that, you know what, this group of people look like. You are the one to be able to sense it psychologically. Then what you're supposed to do as a police officer, I believe, is to make certain moves, monitor them, and if possible, ask them to show you your voter's card. Why? It is not out of place. They are here to vote. So it's expected that if the reason that brought you here is to vote, where is your voter's card? So when you start seeing such malicious attitude, you see people just gathering and you don't understand what they're doing there, you ask them certain questions, because at this period of time, the reason for this gathering is election. And if you are not having a voter's card, and if you are acting differently, I have never been trained, but I believe that these are some of the things you're supposed to sense the danger ahead and be able to stop it. But just as you said, you will go to a polling unit and you will see security officers sitting down instead of patrolling. Your eyes and ears are supposed to be on the ground and everywhere. Exactly. Even when you see a conversation going on, as simple as it might be, as long as it looks like a conversation that could erupt to anything, you should be able to step in and say, you're not supposed to, because arguments have turned into quarrels and fight at polling units.
There are times that when you're done voting, you're being asked to leave, so that these you reduce the number.
Things you are supposed to actively watch out, but we don't have them doing it. That is the problem, I believe, Sele. We don't do our work to the 100% level of it. We just give our 20%, our 30%, and then we are okay with it. But imagine if we were to give 100. There are a lot of things that could have been avoided when it comes to chaos during election. But no, someone slept on their job or felt, hey, I'm just supposed to stand here. No, you're not supposed to stand here. You're supposed to be alert and active. And if you come in not dressed in your uniform, that even gives you an advancement, because it's like you're not on a covert environment. A covert operation, exactly. So you can even blend in, get information. I mean, the job can be done either way. So I'm just looking forward to seeing a better security service in this country, where we don't just think 20% is good enough. If it's not 100%, it's nothing.
Very true, Rachel. Well, let's look forward to seeing that move coming from our security operatives and INEC as well. Still on Blueprint newspaper, we have Presidency blast Atiku says ex-VP new opposition in chief. You can find detail in the paper. And the issue of cancer, World Health Organization predicts 1 million deaths in Africa annually by 2030. Tax continent leaders on the rising cases, and I hope that we can actually do that also by checking the issue of the fake food and products we are having, because this can breed more issue of cancer in the country. Still on Blueprint newspaper, we have S&P affirm Nigerian sovereign credit outlook stable. We will revive Ajekuta Steel within 3 years, coming from the federal government. So I believe Nigerians will start counting on the government to make sure that that start running soon. And we have 200,000 youths to acquire skill in World Bank Ideas project. More detail of that can be found inside the paper, and that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, dollar supply rises by 180% as bank sells $440 million. This is a report coming from NAFEM. Federal government states debts near 107 trillion naira as naira fall rises loans. Tinubu, Obasanjo, world leaders mourn Namibian president. You can find details on page 22. The big story, kidnapping epidemic, fundraising for ransom persists. Ekiti pupils' families pay 15 million naira. Victims' relatives, friends, neighbors raise ransom, school driver killed. This is a statement coming from the proprietor. Kidnapper slash slain Kwara monarch widows ransom to 40 million naira, suspect arrested. Power generation crashes to 59 megawatt as grid collapses again. NSCDC trains vigilantes to secure 821,000 vulnerable schools. You can find details on page 7. 10 hospitalized as police call group clash in Lagos schools. And that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
On this day newspaper, S&P Global affirms Nigerians' credit outlook remains stable at the BNB. Project inflation to hang around 29% in 2024 and then declines to 15% in 2027. Harms on efficient management of Nigerians' inflation and forex crisis. Detail of that found in the paper. And for those who have been following the entertainment, here we're having Burna Boy, Davido, Teams, Olamide, Asake failed to win at the 2024 Grammy Awards. You can find detail of that inside the paper. And we have Winway University says home students will pay in Naira, explain dollar fees. More detail of that should be found in the paper. And then here on the issue of Atiku, Tinubu's economic policies uninformed, creating pains and despair. Your criticism not grounded in logic, presidency fires back. We're still seeing the back and forth again coming from the opposition party and the present ruling party. Cardoso, we have $2.4 billion forex claim not valid. $2.3 billion settled, $2.2 billion outstanding. With the writer saying puts the total loan advanced by Apex Bank to economy at 40 trillion naira, out of which CBN intervention got 10 trillion naira. Dispels rumored plans to convert domiciliary accounts to naira. You can find more detail of that inside the paper. And we have a picture story here that says opening of Stanbic IBTC pension managers new green head office. For those who have been following that story, you can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any other story that is of interest to you.
On the Guardian newspaper, duty increase, spot FX rate adoption throw market into panic. And we have an infograph that shows duty exchange rate since Tinubu's inauguration, percentage price change since May 29. We are seeing it as high as 235%, where we can see the breakdown down from May last year up till now in February 2024. You can find more details inside the paper on page 6. The deadly Ibadan explosion, matters arising. Kidnapping epidemic, a failure of intelligence action at federal capital. You can find details on page 4. Your policies promoting despair, Atiku tells Tinubu. You can find details on page 3. Abducted Ekiti State School children, teachers regain freedom, driver killed. 3 weeks after, new heads of cultural agencies yet to take over. World Cancer Day, high cost of care worsens epidemic, 78,899 death toll yearly. 500 workers left National Hospital in 2 years, CMD laments. BOI EFC Leverage Summit to chart Nigeria's industrial growth. You can find details on page 2, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, Shell plans gas supply to Dangote's fertilizer plant, detail found on page 4. And on the issue of the blackout, power grid collapses again, first in 2024. Maybe the reason why there was no light throughout yesterday and then for a while right now. So for those who have been concerned why we have been having blackouts, you can do well to read more detail of that on page 4. 723 schools closed in 9 states over insecurity and others. This is a report coming from the UNICEF. And on brain drain, over 500 workers left National Hospital in 2 years, coming from the CMD. And the big story on the paper, uncertainty rules currency market as external reserve rise. Volume of dollars trade down to 3% to $2.14 billion. Why sudden massive crash of Naira coming from analysts? One of further depreciation, adverse impact on the economy. You can find more detail of that inside the paper. Driver killed as abducted Ekiti pupils and teacher regained freedom. And on the rerun by-election, mixed fortune as 5 parties win seats, detailed on page 28. Presidency, Atiku fight over Tinubu's economic policy. You can find more detail on page 13 and 30. And we have 8,100 leaving Naira students in Lagos schools may miss the WAEC registration. You can find more detail of why, maybe because of an increase of that. Detail of that can be found on page 8. And here we're seeing on the issue of sport, Bisero plots South Africa fall in semi-finals. Well, I hope that his prediction will be true. We saw his prediction for Friday. He said he was 50% sure. That means he wasn't very certain. But we saw that they did well by beating Angola 1-0. And here we're seeing him saying that he's actually seeing the fall or the fail in the semi-finals coming from South Africa. So our fingers are crossed. I mean, the match is on Wednesday. My heart is already beating concerning that. But I believe that the Eagles will do something great concerning that. And that's all on Vanguard newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, how kidnappers exploit financial systems loopholes. Banks fail to observe due diligence and compliance. You can find details on page 17. How Ekiti Obas were killed by attack survivor Alara. You can find details on page 3. Coming from OK, I've told Aidatiwa I'm gunning for APC ticket. Presidency knocks Atiku over criticisms of government economic policies. You can find details of the back and forth on page 4. The big story, 0 megawatt to discuss crippled homes and businesses. Ministry firm disagree on cause of failure. Minister in frantic meetings. You can start with the details on the front page. We have APC retains 59 Senate seats with wins in Ebonyi South and Yobe North. And the writer under the story says YPP floors Suludo's Abga in Anambra, and then ex-IG Son's victory excites Aidatiwa. Driver shot dead, body burned before abducted Ekiti pupils. It's a sad one that little children have to witness such gruesome things, and I just hope that nobody gets to witness that again. You can find details on the front page. And at the downside of the paper, NCAA goes tough on flight delays. Ex-Governor Abba Ibrahim dies at 73, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
All right, let's take a little break at this moment to let you through the story. What do you feel about, financing terrorism? Here we're also seeing, the trauma that the Ekiti people had to go through, because right before them, the driver was being burned to death. And then we have quite a number of stories, the back and forth coming from the presidency in relation to the response coming from the former vice president concerning the economic policy of Tinubu. So we'd love to hear what your own views are. You can drop them on Facebook or on YouTube. Please stay tuned with us. We'll be back and continue the review after this break.
Hello viewers, my name is Amaka Ocheke. We anchor the program, The Living Room, right here on Equa TV International.
You are welcome to watch us every Monday.
The Living Room is a very interesting family program where we discuss everything you want to know about family.
Talk about our children's mental health.
Keep watching. Our program is always here, 5:30 every Monday. We want you to ask questions. We want you to phone in and drop topics that you want us to talk about, even on our media handle on Facebook. We're there. So keep watching, keep listening. The Living Room.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper. Before we went on the break, we're seeing that there is an increase in fake food and product in the country, and this can give room to, the issue of cancer increasing in the country. Also, we've seen the back and forth coming from the opposition party in person of the former Vice President Atiku and also the presidency. He's actually, talking about the economic policy of Tinubu. So we'd love to hear what your own views are in relation to the issue of insecurity and then some of the violence that actually marred the rerun and by-election in some of the states. So we'd love to hear your view. You can drop them on Facebook or on YouTube. Now let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Daily Sun newspaper. And on the Daily Sun, Edu Guba PDP World Congress is free and fair, credible, coming from Governor Mba. Makinde reject appointment as electoral committee chair. You can find detail of that on page 28. Still on Daily Sun newspaper, electricity outrage at airports, fan under fire. Stakeholders cry out, demand compensation. Switch over responsibility, says airport management. You can find more detail of that on page 25. APC wins Ebonyi South senatorial by-election. It's too early to judge democracy in Africa, coming from Bishop Kuka. Says continent must remain true to its human values. More detail of that can be found on page 6. Abductors of Kwara monarch's wife demand 100 million naira ransom. And NDLEA intercept 14.5 tons of Ghanaian cannabis linked to wanted drug baron in Lagos. Detail of that can be found on page 5. Name terror sponsors laundering money. SCS in challenges the EFCC. Remember, last week we saw that issue where there was an allegation from the EFCC saying that a religious body is responsible for that. And here we're seeing that the SCNA is telling them to actually name the terror sponsor so that people can actually get over with this allegation. Downside of the paper on insecurity, 2 Catholic priests kidnapped in Lagos, reps mourn state police. More detail of that can be found on page 4 and 28, and that's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, NCAA warns domestic airlines on flight disruptions. The big story, Presidency Atiku clash over Tinubu's policies. You can find details on page 4. Northern youths trace insecurity, economic woes to Buhari. Flay Katsina elders attack on Tinubu. You can start with the details on the front page. Mahi knocks contractors, engineers for poor quality jobs. Makinde rejects Edo PDP Guba screening panel chair. You can find details on page 5. Nigeria's business PMI hits 54.5 points in January. You can find details on page 14. At the downside of the paper, equities market sustains weekly gains by 1.97%. And that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
And on the Abuja Inquiry newspaper, Betty Gate presidency mom 1 month after CISLAC kicks. More detail found on the front page and on page 4. And on the issue of strike, NUT teachers await week's decision on peculiar allowances. FCTA to spend 30.9 billion naira on rehabilitating 12 schools. Jenny Editing offers hope for people with hereditary disorder. You can find that on page 13. And coming from the World Health Organization, cancer killed over 500,000 Africans in 2022. You can find more detail on page 15. And the big story for the paper is on kidnapping. Our efforts will yield results soon, coming from the FCT minister, saying Abuja clamped down on cars with no plate numbers, visit families of other victims, Masor tells the minister. And here we are having power restore after national grid collapse first in 2024, and that's all on the Abuja Inquiry newspaper.
On Daily Independent, Serap asks Tinubu to probe missing $3.4 billion IMF loan or face legal action. Edo PDP Guba Primary, Shaibu and Yahoo, 7 others petition alleged process won't be fair, decry multiple lists of electoral officers. The big story on the paper, no FDIs months after subsidy removal, affect liberalization. And the writer under the story says Nigerians' weak purchasing power can attract FDIs. This is coming from an analyst. You can start with the details on the front page. Oyebanji loots Tinubu security agencies over release of abducted school children. Visits rescued Ekiti pupils, teachers in hospital. You can find details on page 29. Hunters in Southwest seek arms from members coming from the OPC, and this is on insecurity. Minister raises committee to resolve gas supply challenges to GenCos. Denies casting for subsidy removal. Former Yobe governors dead, huge loss coming from Tinubu and Buni. You can find details on page 7. Tinubu mourns Namibian President Hage Geingob. You can find more details on page 29. And other stories on the paper, aviation stakeholders insist new ground handling rates justified. Call for extensive negotiation with airlines, waivers from the federal government. And at the downside of the paper, Nigeria expresses first grid collapse in 2024, and I believe that many are to come. We knew how 2022 was one gridlock collapse after the other, and then we just starting 2024, and in February we've had this one is even 0 megawatts. In the past we had it will go down to a certain amount of megawatts, but this time around is nothing. And I believe that until the power sector fix the real problem behind the gridlock collapsing, every now and then we are definitely going to witness more. We keep seeing put back fuel subsidy. Remove subsidy from electricity. And the question is, if it's been removed, does it take away the grid collapse? That is the question. Or are you just moving for it to be removed so that we will just see
and be paying for something that you don't even enjoy eventually?
Exactly, Sele. So let's just see what will be it for power when it comes to 2024. We are seeing that is one of the #1 reasons businesses, multinational, medium, scale enterprises are leaving, and then we are starting the year on this kind of note. It doesn't smell good for businesses or even households whatsoever. So let's see what will be done to make power more consistent in the country than news about our grids collapsing. And you can find details of that on page 6, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
Right, let's take a look at Nigerian News Direct. Traders record loss in millions as fire as Swan Mill in Lagos. Traders record loss in millions as fire raise sawmills in Lagos. Detail of that found in the paper. $3.4 billion missing IMF loan. Serap calls on Tinubu to probe Buhari's administration. Blackout as power grid collapses for the first time in 2024. And on oil investment, NCDMB pledges to speed up approval processes, limit sanction to boost the FDI. The big story here is on the economic policy of Tinubu, where we're seeing Atiku accuses Tinubu of worsening economic, increasing pain of poor Nigerians. The writer here says presidency dismisses Atiku criticism as unfounded and hypocritical. Federal government challenges the former vice president to provide constructive alternatives. Detail found on page 4. Kaduna by-election, APC breaks PDP 25 years dormancy in Chukwu constituencies. Resident doctors accuse the CMD of delaying payment of 25,000 quarterly allowance. We're remembering the CMDs are saying about 500,000 doctors have actually stopped working, and here we're seeing resident doctors are accusing the CMD of delaying the payment of 25,000 quarterly allowances. Well, we hope that the CMDs are not the reason why we're having more doctors japping. So we hope that they can do something, and then the government can also, possibly come into and see what can be done so we can have our doctors stay back in the country. We have a picture story on the front page. You can do well to grab the paper, read any other story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, Naira value and inflation, construction experts groan. How unstable exchange rate affects importers' cargoes at ports. Research agency says 275 firms have closed shops. You can find details on page 6. And on economic challenges, which is the big story, presidency Atiku in war of words. Tinubu's response, uninformed, arbitrary, chaotic, a statement coming from Atiku. Atiku doing a poor job, offers no alternative to president's policies, a statement coming from the presidency. And the question is, if he was to offer an alternative, will the presidency listen? And because I believe that it's just unfortunate, Sele, that Atiku have to be on the opposition party. But yes, so far so good. Economic policies by the Tinubu administration has been poor. There is no doubt. I keep saying it that perhaps it's just Atiku having to be on a position where even if what he is saying is true, he could be shut down by APC, he could be shut down by the presidency and tagged as they call it, the last time we saw it on the paper, they said it is a hangover from losing the election.
Of course.
However, it is not. Some of these policies, let's be realistic, Sele, recently, amidst this hardship, we saw our president flying to Paris on a private getaway, and guess what? On our paper, in that week, where the president is not bearing the hardship, we are being asked as Nigerians
to be patient,
to be patient and bear the hardship. And you can sit down, Sele, as a common man and calculate how much is going to go into the expenditure, just even for where the president parks his jet. Let's put it like that, the hangar. The fee alone, for as long as it's going to be there, it's going to be footed by the government. And every other expenses, and admit everything not going well, admit insecurity, admit pupils being kidnapped in Ekiti, admit everything that is going on in the country, we are having the president going on vacation, and yet we are being asked to bear the hardship that was clearly created out of unthought decisions or not well-planned policies. And then when you look at it, it just happened to be coming out from a man that happened to be an opposition party. But the question is, would you accept it if it was coming out from someone in your party telling you the truth? Are you going to be sincere as leaders to tell yourself the truth that, you know what, this, we didn't do it well, this, we didn't execute it well, this is not going to yield these results, and all of that. But the truth is that amid this hardship, we are seeing action from our leaders that says, you know what, you the masses, bear the hardship. For us, we are just going to relax and enjoy ourselves and just keep telling you to be patient with us. And the question is, do we have any options, Sele, than to be patient?
And for how long?
And for how
are we
long?
supposed to be patient, Rachel?
That is the question.
Because when you say let's be patient, is another question. For how long are Nigerians supposed to be patient with this present administration? You made mention, of course, some of the policies they bring, they look very beautiful and fabulous, but I mean, is it the right time to actually have such policy? And then what measures have you put, or modalities have you put in place to make sure that, you know what, for every of this policy, we'll make sure that it's being implemented in the right way? Just like you rightly mentioned, the issue of the hardship. Here we're seeing that our Naira keeps going down on that one every day. Here we're seeing multinationals leaving the shores of the country. Here we are seeing power grid going down. Here we are hearing even say they want to remove subsidy from electricity.
Yeah.
We have not recovered from the subsidy being removed from fuel. You want to remove fuel subsidy from subsidy again from electricity. So eventually, what are we? Even for drugs right now, Nigerians are not even feeling like there's anything being paid for them. Eventually, so just like you rightly mentioned, would they welcome it if it's coming from the opposition party? It's just quite unfortunate, Rachel, that we're in a country or we have found ourselves in a situation whereby anything coming from our opposition party is being taken like an attack. And I mentioned this last week, Richard, the fact that if he is right, then you should take it up as a challenge and rectify whatever. But if he is wrong, work towards proving him wrong. But from the way it's looking, Nigerians will have no choice but to agree with him, whether you are from the APC or not. Eventually, we all go to the same market to buy goods. So when you go to the market, you not be asked which party you belong to. The policy will affect everybody eventually. So we hope that we'll grow as a country where, regardless of who is actually attacking us, you will not take this as an attack, but rather you take this as a challenge. You say, you know what, let us work towards making sure that things are working out in the country eventually, because when it's good, we benefit. When it's bad, we all suffer from it eventually. So I hope that our government will, I keep mentioning, I mean, this back and forth coming from there is getting tired. We just do not want to hear. All we are interested in is for the country to work out eventually. So that's what we want.
Still on the paper, Namibia's President Hage Geingob dies at 82. Northern Youth Group false casino elders remark against Tinubu's government. Cancer killed over 500,000 Africans in 2022, a report from the World Health Organization. And on brain drain, 500 workers left national hospitals in 2 years. This is from the Chief Medical Directors lamenting. Police parade suspected killers of Ekiti Monarch. The writer under the story says, how we killed them, suspect confesses. Driver killed as abducted pupils, teachers regain freedom. We paid their abductors money, gave them milk, drinks, tramadol for their release. This is coming from a family source. Oyebanji visits victims in hospitals, says perpetrators will be arrested. Victims undergo trauma treatment. We have a picture story where we can see the visit from Oyebanji, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Just very sad, Rachel. I mean, reading this story makes me emotional, but I hope that our government is towards making sure that students will feel safe. I mean, we saw one of the stories where it said, I mean, the civil defense are working towards deploying some of their agency to vulnerable schools. Richard, every school is vulnerable at its present day. There's no school that you said is more vulnerable than the other everywhere, because right now the way it's looking, that even if they can make it to the FCT, where else can they make it in the country? So I keep mentioning the fact that these people cannot outnumber the security agency, but we just have to work towards being something tactical about it eventually. Well, let's take a look at the New Telegraph newspaper, where we have customers deposit in 7 banks hit 24 trillion naira in 2023. More detail found inside the paper. NCAA 53% of flights operated in Nigeria in 2023 delayed airlines to be sanctioned. Detail found on page 2. Still on New Telegraph newspaper, Africa recorded over 573,000 cancer deaths in 2022, coming from the World Health Organization. And on Edo Guba, 9 aspirants boycott PDP World Congress. Detail found on page 30. Also, the big story here says Niger's exit from ECOWAS will affect regional fight against terrorism, coming from the right general. Says Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, bloc exit, big security challenge for Nigeria, stresses the need to spend much more on defense. Lack of political will worsen insecurity, coming from security sources, and I have no choice but to agree with this. Also, we have insecurity now a national calamity, coming from Bode George. We hope that we'll see political will coming from our leaders to fight insecurity in the country. Nigeria thrown into darkness again as national grid collapses. Wike loyalists regroup in Rivers as Fubara's commissioners coronation. You can find detail of that on page 29. Protests rock Kaduna as stray bullet killed one during Saturday's by-election. And then we have Emba's award on security, very deserving, coming from the group. Still a New Telegraph newspaper. Nigerians doctor-patient ratio worsen as 900 medics migrate yearly, coming from the minister. And then also kidnapping, poor economic may make Tinubu's Nigerians worst president. You can find detail inside the paper. And we have a study that says recycling can reduce prostate cancer risks. So I think this should be a study that everyone should be interested in. So you can read that study on page 27, and that's all the New Telegraph newspaper.
On First News newspaper, we have police arrest suspected killer of Ekiti monarchs. Bishop Coker receives 10,000 euros Mundo Negro Fraternity Award in Spain. Makinde Legacy Group boycott PDP delegate election. This happened in Edo State. Ex-Yobe Governor Bukar Abba dies in Saudi Arabia. NCAA reads riot act to airlines over flight disruptions. Arsenal beat Liverpool to close gap at the top. This is on the English Premier League. The big story on the paper: economic hardship again. Atiku presidency trade wars. As ex-VP slams Tinubu, says federal government policies dashing hopes, creating pain and causing despair. You can find more details inside the paper. Blackout hits Nigeria as country experiences first grid collapse in 2024. TCN confirms restoration of power hours after. And concerning cancer, World Health Organization expresses concern over rising cases, tax African leaders. Abducted Ekiti school children finally released as victims undergo trauma treatment. And at the downside of the paper, more things will still happen in Rivers. A statement coming from Wike, and Wike should please face the FCT as we are still having many more abduction and insecurity.
Things that will happen are good things.
I hope so. But he should face Abuja and say good things will happen in the Federal Capital Territory, not in Rivers State.
Very true, Rachel. And we just hope that leaders will realize that you don't have monopoly over a particular state. The state belongs to everybody. So when you hear statements like this, more things will still happen. It makes you look as if for all you and I know, nothing good lately have come out of Rivers.
Yes.
Either one crisis, one saga after another. So when you hear more, it makes you look as if more chaos is about to come out. But we believe that just like you already mentioned, he should concentrate on the FCT. We're seeing that there should be a number of rehabilitation going on there. The chaos, the crisis, kidnapping, abduction have been going on there. He should concentrate on that. So farewell, Rachel. Thank you so much for doing the program with me. And also thank you to our viewers and supporters for keeping the date with us on the Dailies. Until we come your way again tomorrow, do have a blessed Monday.